A history of Harry Spratt. Harry Spratt's full name on his baptism was Henry John James Spratt, but he was known as Harry, the usual short form of Henry here in England during those days. Harry and Agnes's son, Harry Spratt Jr., 1862 to 1938, also played banjo and wrote tunes for the banjo. There are many examples of their tunes as sheet music still available. Harry Spratt, 1836 to 1920, was a banjo maker, banjo teacher, performer, professor of banjo, and composer of tunes for the banjo. He grew up in St. Pancras. His parents were James Thomas, known as Thomas, and Catherine. Harry's siblings were Caroline, 1838. He catered to the aristocracy as a tutor and builder. He built one banjo for Prince Albert Victor of Wales, tutored many lords and ladies. He always stayed close to the Strand, one of the most fashionable areas of London. His first shop was located at 17 Catherine Street, across from the Drury Theatre. This banjo was built there in the mid-1870s. Catherine Street was torn down in the late 1880s, when he then moved shop to 10 Duke Street, just down Villars Street off the Strand. The following article is from January the 24th, 1889, from the Pall Mall Gazette, wanting to interview Mr. Spratt and meet the man who built the banjo for the Prince of Wales. It gives a nice insight into what kind of person he was.
January the 24th, 1889. From the Pall Mall Gazette. More about the banjo. A talk with Prince Albert Victor's banjo maker. Duke Street, Adelphi, can hardly be denominated a fashionable promenade, yet there are occasions when members of our highest aristocracy pay visits to the dim little street at the back of the Strand. Anyone chancing to walk along the north side of the street, from Villars Street, with his eyes open, can hardly fail to notice a dingy little shop, about 1/3 of the way up, whose window will well repay a few moments' inspection. Indeed, it is calculated to attract the attention of the most unobservant stray foot passenger. Prominent, in the center of a large assortment of banjos and violins, tambourines, and nigger bones, is a life-sized model of the head of a darky of true Christie minstrel type, bearing amid its woolly curls a miniature hat, which seems most incongruous. Alongside of this figure's head is a small model of a skeleton dancing, a framed model of Olayde and Tucker, in the character of a dusky Orpheus, charming the snakes and crocodiles and possums with the darky's instrument, a banjo. But there is another object in this quaint window show which will at once be noticed. It is an unmistakable portrait, apparently clipped from some illustrated paper, of the young Prince Albert Victor of Wales, also represented as playing a banjo. Moreover, in the brief clipping of letterpress included in the frame is the announcement that His Royal Highness has recently taken to the now fashionable instrument, and has had one specially made for him by Harry Spratt, of 10 Duke Street, Adelphi. Then this must be the shop and perhaps the workshop too, of the young prince's banjo maker. This much occurred to a Pall Mall Gazette reporter a few days ago, as he passed the strange emporium. So, in the interests of the readers of this paper, he concluded to make Mr. Spratt's acquaintance, and find out, if possible, something about the quaint musical instrument which seems to be setting all fashionable London by the ears, that is to say, that portion of fashionable London which is possessed of an ear for music. "Are you Mr. Harry Spratt?" asked the reporter of a youngish-looking man, with hair and eyes as black as the raven's wing, who stood behind the counter. "I am Harry Spratt, Jr. Do you want to see father?" "I want to see the Harry Spratt, who made a banjo for the young Prince of Wales." "Oh, that's my father. He's down below. If you wait, I'll call him." The reporter intimated that he would wait, and Harry Spratt, Jr., first, administering a sort of postman's rat-a-tat-tat on the floor with his heel, vanished into the back premises, and was shortly heard calling, "Governor, there's a gentleman wants to see you." Meanwhile I had time to look around him. If the window's contents were heterogeneous, how can the contents of the shop be described? On two of the walls are large glass cases filled with the peculiar instruments which make the staple article of Mr. Spratt's trade, of every size and shape and make, mixed indiscriminately with violins of queerest and quaintest form and dimensions. On the counter is another case filled in the same manner, and a second case simply crammed full of bones, whistles, ocarinas, brackets, bridges, pegs, tuning pipes, and other strange things, lay at length on part of the counter. But the most remarkable objects in the shop are the pictures which hang upon the walls. A caricature of Lieutenant Dan Godfrey conducting an imaginary band, a wonderfully clever watercolor of the witches in Macbeth, a plaster bust of Charles Laurie, a plate of the representative journalists of the United States, several picture posters, a number of framed photographs, all hung with apparent indifference as to the incongruity of their neighborhood. "Do you want me, sir?" asked a soft voice behind him, as the reporter was making a somewhat close examination of a clever watercolor series of 4 pictures representing the love, hate, war, and peace, and a pair of hideously ugly demons. Then turning, he found a man about 50 years of age, with gray hair and chin beard, with soft eyes, and enveloped in a white apron, up to his neck, standing, regarding him with a smile of remarkable sweetness. "Are you Mr. Spratt?" "Yes, sir." There is a slight lisp, which perhaps is what makes the voice so pleasant. "What can I do for you?" "I want you to tell me about banjos. How they are made, what they are made of, and who plays upon them." "That's rather a large order, sir, but I'll try to give you all the information I can. Now, how shall I begin? With the first thing we set about making. Well, that is the handle. It is made of various kinds of wood by various makers, but I prefer walnut to anything. I used to like mahogany best, but I can no longer obtain wood sufficiently dry and well seasoned for my purpose, whereas walnut is a close-grained wood, is light, easily worked, and comes here in capital condition. Besides, I think the tone in walnut is better than in any other wood. This block of wood has to be cut into the correct size, length, and shape for the handle, sandpapered, scraped, polished, and varnished. Length? Well, there are differences of opinion as to that. Some like the handle much longer than others. It greatly depends on the length of the fingers which have got to play upon the banjo. The brothers Bow here use very long-handled banjos, but then they are very big men, and have large hands. My own idea is that the best length is 27 inches from nut to drum. The drum is the next thing to make. That is made of oak wood, but many people now prefer metal drums, considering the tone obtained to be clearer and more resounding. Some line the metal with wood, which, in the case of some American banjos, I have seen, has been maple. You know, I have a metal banjo of my own make which has no wood about it. Of course, the bending of the wood into the shape of the drum has to be done by special machinery, but I do my own polishing and finishing off. The brackets and screws are also made by a regular molder, but I do the finishing of those also myself. Fixing a skin upon a drum is a delicate operation requiring considerable patience. An unpracticed hand is liable to burst 2 or 3 in the drying, for of course they are stretched over the drum when wet. What first induced you to take up with banjo making, Mr. Spratt? "Oh, I do not exactly know, sir. I remember very well the first time I ever heard a banjo played was over 40 years ago at the Royal Albert Saloon, a little theatre in Shepherdess Walk, City Road, belonging to one Harry Brading. The player was Harry Nathan, the Harlequin. I took a fancy to it even then. Then it was played by a troupe called the Lantham Serenaders. A short while after, and I liked it still better. But what I think really settled me in making a business of it was seeing one and handling one in the shop of Mr. Charles Saunders, of Whitechapel, about 27 years ago. He also showed me some tiny model banjos. I remember going home and making one. Then I got to making a bigger one, and playing on it, and then my wife said I'd better go into the business. So I took a little shop in Catherine Street, opposite Drury Lane Theatre, and have continued at it ever since. When the lease fell out, and the old shop was pulled down, I came here. I suppose you have made a great many during 27 years. Hundreds of them. My banjos are almost all over the world. Why, sir, there are 3 gentlemen, brothers, in business in Calcutta, each with one of my banjos, and 2 others, also brothers, in Hong Kong with my banjos. I have them in Australia and at the Cape, in Canada, and in the States. In fact, they go everywhere. It is reported that the banjo is a very fashionable instrument. Do you find it so? Well, sir, I have taught some of the nobility and gentry to play upon it. Count Gleichen used to come to this shop and take lessons, and I waited upon the Countess at St. James Palace to teach her. I have also taught the Countess Cooper and Lady Compton, and Lady Coke, Lady Inchiquin, and Lady Maud Wilbraham, and also Lady Colin Campbell when she was Miss Blood. She was a very pretty player too. I taught Miss Mary Anderson, the great American actress, and Miss Nell Farron, and Miss Fanny Leslie. And I also taught Mr. George Grossmith and Mr. Rutland Barrington, and Capel, the opera singer. Most of them have been either in this little back room here, sir, or else up at the old place in Catherine Street, which was smaller still. It is of interest to note that Mr. Ernest Groom, an interview with whom appeared in these columns last week, is also an old pupil of Mr. Spratt.